Good evening, folks.
Good evening. It's really good to see you for what I would say more of our normal Thursday. We don't have any guest speakers today. So we know that Paul Grantham is here and he's going to do the presentation. So we are in safe hands tonight.
Maybe.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. That's my hope. SDS Thursday is brought to you by SDS Seminars. Those who've been here before know that we are a UK-based company and we've been running for almost 35 years now. So a lot of experience, but we try to keep it fresh, both for your sake and for our own sake, because if we didn't do new things all the time, going for 35 years, believe me, is not easy. So what we will ask you to do is to start typing and let us know a little bit about yourself. We always read your comments all the time. So please let us know where you are in the world, where you are in the world, where you are joining us from, and how did you hear about us? Because I actually saw quite a lot of new names tonight. Because lots of names and lots of faces are very familiar. We've been running this Thursdays since 2020, believe it or not. So yes, it's almost 4 years, and we almost 5 years now, and we know many of you. But if you're here for the first time, please let us know, how did you discover SDS Thursday? If you've been here before and if you like SDS Thursday, please share that as well, because it will be nice, especially for those who are here for the first time, to know why are you coming back. And secondly, I will ask you to let us know about your experience with trauma and with solution-focused therapy, because today's topic is, I can see we've got actually a lot of people coming, and today's topic is on, waiting room is full, on solution-focused therapy and trauma. So are you here because you work with trauma? Are you here because you practice solution-focused therapy? Or are you here because you are interested in finding and learning something new? So please just let us know. I also would like to know whether you've done training on solution-focused therapy with Paul, because Paul has been delivering introductory courses on solution-focused therapy for a number of years now. And because he's not saying it yourself, I'm saying it, I believe it's one of the best short trainings on SFT available in this country. It's really, really fun, enlightening, and informative course. So as always, I will share my screen with you and let you know about the course which this Thursday relates to. And we will let other people to come, because I know we had lots of people registering for tonight's event. So I'll share the screen now and talk to you a little bit, and then we'll go to the main presentation. So as always, we start with our main website, skillsdevelopment.co.uk. And here I want to take you straight down to special offers. It's my suggestion, whenever you come to SDS website, first check out special offers. So this way you will never miss any attractive offers which are about to expire. So in special offers, you will see there's two courses with the key. Yes, solution focus, finding a solution. So that's the symbol I've chosen for this course. So two courses with the key. And one of them is solution focused therapy for complex trauma. It's a brand new course. We've never done it before. Paul has developed it for us especially, and he will be running it in a month's time at the end of November, 22nd and 29th of November. And we still have a late discount for this course, 15% off. The course is a full day, 6 hours course, but split into 2 parts. So he will be running it once a week, 3 hours. 3 hours on the 22nd and 3 hours on the 29th. Lots of people gave us feedback that this sort of splitting of the courses is much easier for them because they can come to the training in the morning and then continue with seeing clients or any other work in the afternoon. So we're listening to you, and that's why we've decided to run this course in this format. However, if you haven't done the introduction to solution focused therapy, it's a BPS approved course. It's a full 2 days course, so not split. It's 2 full days course, but it is instant access, so you can watch it at any time because Paul has already done it and it is recorded for you. So if you want to do the introduction to SFT before you come to the complex trauma course, we've got an offer of 2 bookings combined for you. And in terms of the price, it is the best price. So if you want to do introductory course as well as trauma, you can book 2 courses at the same time and do introduction at your own time whenever is convenient, and then come at the end of November to the trauma course, already being prepared for solution focused approach. Of course, you will ask me, can I do solution focused therapy for trauma without doing introduction to solution focused therapy? Yes, you can. Paul will be covering enough in the course for you to take advantage of the information. However, you might decide afterwards that you still want to do solution focus if you just like the approach and like the modality and would like to learn more. So you have options, but I think the best option is to do the introductory course and then come for the trauma course. If you've done with us in the past, if you've done with us a BPS approved certificate in resource-based therapies or BPS approved certificate in trauma treatments, and you want to extend your SDS accreditation for those 2 courses, this course on solution focused therapy for complex trauma works as an extension course as well. So you can just do that course and your accreditation is automatically extended. I hope I didn't confuse you too much. I hope it's quite clear, and I am very happy to pass the microphone to Paul now to talk to us on the subject. Please, Paul.
Thanks very much, Julia. And again, welcome, folks. Welcome on this this evening when we have an unusually large and full moon, which seems to be attracting a lot of attention on the news. But I'm glad that it's not stopped you coming along here this evening. I'm glad you're not all outside staring up at the sky, but you've decided to join us here. I'll just dive straight in, I guess, and with my PowerPoint presentation, just so we can start from there. Let me say a little bit, first of all, about my journey in terms of how I started not so much doing work in this, because I've been doing work in the complex trauma field for a number of years, but how I sort of arrived at my position that I guess has occurred and which I hope to share in the training that's going to be coming up. Complex trauma, which I'll say a little bit about specifically what it is and how it's different from single episode trauma, is something which I think people who are working with fall into one of 3 groups. I think there are some people who basically know that they're working with clients who have got histories of complex trauma. I think there are some people who basically think that they work with trauma in inverted commas, and that largely all trauma is the same. So they don't really differentiate between single episode and complex. And I think there's also a large number of people who are actually working with people with complex trauma, but are unaware of it. And there's a variety of reasons for that, which I'll come on to in a minute. But one of them undoubtedly is the fact that a large proportion of clients we'll be working with will not come along and say, I've got problems with complex trauma. They will come along with something else, and it will not necessarily be either self-evident that that exists in their history, or alternatively, can I say, there may not necessarily be an obvious connection between that and the sort of problems that they're actually presenting with. So I wanted to say a little bit about that. I think the other thing that led me to this particular position, and I'll be quite honest about this, for years and years, I found working with complex trauma incredibly challenging. And I feel quite happy about sitting here and saying, I know that I had easily as many therapeutic failures, if not more, than I ever had successes. And I put that down to all sorts of things. But the reality is that this is a very difficult, very, very challenging set of issues to actually deal with. So for me, to some degree, and this actually occurred for me while I was on retreat at one particular point, I thought to myself, I've got to start thinking about this in a different way, because the sort of models and theories that I've tended to bring along to addressing this, to be blunt with you, don't work. And I can put it down to the fact that I'm just not good enough at my job. And that's why the failures have occurred. But I think also as well, I just felt that I needed to develop a different approach basically to the one that I was actually involved with. So that's how a lot of this stuff came about. What I'm going to share with you a little bit today, this evening, is first of all, what complex trauma actually is. Secondly, the problems that are actually around with it. I'm going to give you a short exercise, by the way, a case study exercise to do. When I say to do, I mean to generate some thoughts on and some ideas on. And then finally say a little bit about how I think that solution-focused work provides an alternative route and approach, which, to be blunt with you, in my opinion, bypasses a lot of the problems that are actually around very often in terms of trying to work with this. And I hope at least whets your appetite or stimulates your thinking about finding out more about how to work with this in a way which is maybe different from the way in which you worked before. So what do we actually mean by this? Let's start off with some broadly accepted definitions. So a type of traumatic event. So this is the first thing I do want to emphasize, by the way. There's a terrible confusion these days about what the term trauma actually means. Strictly speaking, trauma simply means a particular event. So it's about circumstances or things that happen to people. And in that respect, they typically, I think, tend to lead individuals to know that something's bad has happened to them. But it's as broad, it's as broad as that, but it equally doesn't mean, as we'll come on to in a moment, doesn't mean that everybody who's experienced bad things that have happened to them necessarily end up being traumatized. In fact, the sort of proportion that we're talking about, actually, interestingly enough, certainly with single episode traumas, is relatively small. But I'll come back to that point in a minute. So it's a type of traumatic event that occurs repeatedly and cumulatively. So this is something bad that happens to people, not just as a one-off. So this in a sense is quite different from someone being raped once. It's quite different from somebody losing a limb in the battlefield, for instance, which are single episode events. These are events that occur more than once, and they tend to be cumulative. And that I think is important, because we do know that there's a natural recovery process that's around, certainly with single episode trauma, which incidentally is one of the key reasons why such a high proportion of people, largely, to be honest with you, if they're left to their own devices, will actually not develop major problems. And obviously the implication of this is that when you have those bad things happening to you that are cumulative, then the chances of that occurring, of natural spontaneous recovery, is substantially less. These usually exist over a period of time, so they're quite, for most people, I think it's fair to say they're quite extensive. And why that's important to recognize is that it tends to mean that people's experience of these bad things while they're experiencing them often have the quality of feeling that they potentially could go on forever. So there's an increased sense, I hope you can see there, of a lack of sense of control over what's actually occurring. The other thing that's worth emphasizing is that they tend to occur within specific relationships and contexts. I'm going to just expand this a little bit in a minute, but in that respect, they are different, I think, from single episode traumas, which tend to be much more broad-based in terms of the sorts of things we're talking about. These tend to occur but within particular contexts, and I'll say a little bit about that in a minute. So they are repetitive, prolonged, or cumulative. I've already mentioned that. The second part, I think, in many ways is one of the most crucial elements to realize about complex trauma, because they are typically interpersonal. These are not bad things that have happened to people, which typically don't involve people. So, there's lots of single episode traumas that don't necessarily involve people. So, if I'm part of a natural disaster, for instance, that doesn't directly involve other people, but I can, I'm experiencing a single episode trauma and can be traumatized by it. These are all to do with things or contexts that involve other people, and typically involve direct harm, exploitation, or maltreatment, which involves neglect, abandonment, or hostility, usually involving either primary caregivers or responsible adults. So just a few things to sort of pull out from this. The mention of primary caregivers does tend to imply that a lot of these processes start when individuals are within childhood or adolescence. And the implication there, of course, is that there is a big power differential between the other people and the person who's at the receiving end of this. And also these other people typically have more authority as well, and are often, not always, but often are physically stronger too. And that's an issue. Or I've got down here responsible adults, because even when individuals, for instance, are in adulthood, they can still be traumatized in a cumulative way. But this is usually when we've got adults who are committing this, who have some sort of formal authority role or formal authority power over the individual concerned. I don't necessarily mean, when I say formal, I don't mean, in some instances, this can be a formal role that's been given to somebody, but in many instances it can just, if I have locked somebody in a room and I'm torturing them over a period of time, I have that particular formal authority. Nobody's given it to me. It's just that I've created a context where I clearly have a high level of authority and power over the person concerned. So these are most likely to at least start or run through developmentally vulnerable times in the victim's life. So most commonly childhood and adolescence in terms of when they start. But with regards to adulthood, they tend to be more commonly occurring when the individual is in an ongoing vulnerable position. And I've got down here physical frailty, disempowerment, or disability in some way. In other words, the individual is, for want of a better term, a vulnerable individual, either physically or psychologically in some way. And the implication of this obviously is it amplifies the degree of helplessness that the individual experiences. But can I just also add, there's a key issue around the fact that so much of this starts during childhood and adolescence. And I'm going to come back to this particularly during the training course, but which I'll mention briefly today, is that we're talking here about human beings who are still physically developing. They are still physically developing in terms of things like physical growth and muscle strength, but they are also, and this is particularly important, I think, for anyone that's working in a psychological way, they are also developmentally changing neurologically. And I'm going to come back to this point because in both instances, we know that complex trauma seriously interferes with developmental processes. I'll come back to that point in a minute. And those effects, by the way, are correctable later on, potentially, but it's unlikely they're ever fully correctable. And it also has some very, very big implications, as we're going to see, for what you might do with people who whose experience of complex trauma has started in that way.
I hope it was, as Paul said, enough to spark your interest in attending the course. And I put the link to the course a couple of times, and it is currently with 15% discount for the next 2 weeks until the end of the month. Thank you very much for your comments. Really appreciate them. And because it's now 8 o'clock, you can unmute yourself and say your goodbyes, and we will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Yeah, take care, folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Take care. Look after yourselves.